All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for the Ucommerce 9 webinar, where we'll take a look at the new version of Ucommerce, which is coming out very soon. I hope you're all safe out there, given all the craziness that's going on in the world. As you can see, this is sort of from the home office that this is going on, but I think it's pretty awesome that we're able to pull this off even though the world is the way it is. So I'm hoping it's the same for you guys. You stay safe and that you're getting some awesome projects done out there. My name is Soren. I'm the founder of Ucommerce, as many of you know, and I'm here today to share with you some details on Ucommerce 9. Before we do, let me just talk a little bit about some of the housekeeping that we need to get out of the way. First, there is no chat on the webinar here today. If you have questions, there is a QA, which is moderated by some of my fellow Ucommercians on the panelist team here. So if you have questions, please go ahead and post them in the QA. Also vote up if you see something interesting. Whenever you vote up, it will mean it sort of comes to my attention. So if there's something of particular interest, just give it a little thumbs up or whatever, however that works. This webinar is being recorded for later, so if you have colleagues who can't join us today, or if you want to revisit some of the points that we talk about here today, there will be a video which you can watch with friends and families, and maybe some colleagues if you feel like it. So without further ado, let's go. So today we have already completed the welcome, so we're off to the races. We're looking at Ucommerce 9 to begin with, just a quick tour through our thinking about how it's put together, what capabilities are in there, and some demos, of course, lots and lots of demos. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to migrate to V9. V9 is one of the biggest releases we've ever done for Ucommerce after V1. So there will be some things to keep in mind as you move to the new version of Ucommerce. We'll talk a little bit about roadmap. So what can you expect and when, and also availability. So when can you get your hands on Ucommerce and start using it for your own projects? And again, if questions come to mind, remember to use the Q&A whenever I look over there. That's because I'm looking at that, seeing if there's something there. So feel free to jump in and ask any questions you want. It's always much more fun when we can make it more of a sort of interactive thing. Of time speaking to our partners, to discover what we needed to focus on for the next major release of Ucommerce. And your answers were very clear, very, very clear, actually. There were basically two pillars that we needed to focus on, as you can see here: performance and back office. So one of the key concerns we've gotten over, not just over this round of feedback, but over actually the last couple of years, is that Ucommerce can be difficult to create a fast performing solution with. The APIs that we expose are so flexible that creating a fast solution can be a little difficult. So we wanted to make that easier, make it more accessible, make sure that we land you, our partners, in the pit of success when you're creating solutions. So performance issues will be much less of an issue going forward. We may even have found a way to eliminate it altogether. We'll see. The other bit of feedback we got was on the back office. So, the mark of a good piece of software is when it sort of has a very long lifespan, and I can certainly say that the back office of Ucommerce have had a very long lifespan. It's actually 11 years old these days, built on old technology. So part of the feedback we got was basically your back office needs an update. Basically, it needs to have a look and feel update. It needs to be faster. It needs to be more accessible. And so we focused on that. Speeding up performance when you're building solutions for your customers, and improving the back office of Ucommerce so merchants can get stuff done faster. Now, for the back office project in particular, I gotta say it is a big project. So we're not shipping a full new back office just to set expectations right off the bat. We're shipping the first part of the UI revamp, and we'll take a look at what that means. So the first bit, how did we address performance? So Project Bolt is our sort of internal name for the new search-driven API we have discovered. The reason, the motivation behind Bolt was to create a fast API that's easy to use, and it was to actually ship out of the box the way of building a Ucommerce solution. So over the years, we've had we've been reluctant to break the old APIs to make sure that as you upgrade to newer versions of Ucommerce, you would be able to just roll forward with minimum changes required to your solutions. And that's great because you could just upgrade to the latest and greatest with little changes required. However, in the long run, it also means that there started to be lots and lots of different ways of creating a Ucommerce solution, and it was uncertain which one was the best. So Project Bolt really aims to bring all the available options of building a solution down to exactly one to make it super easy to figure out how to do it. That's the one thing. The other thing is that as we sort of spoke to partners, there was a very clear approach to how to build really fast e-commerce solutions these days. And it's not running on SQL Server, I can say that for a fact. It's actually leveraging a search engine. I think a lot of you participating today will sort of nod along and say, yes, to build a fast e-commerce solution, we're using search technology like Elasticsearch or Lucene or Solar or whatever. So those were really the two main goals of Project Bolt, to give you one, fast solution to build an e-commerce solution, and second, to leverage search technology, which you are doing today anyway. What we also saw, and we've seen this again and again, that as partners build out these search tiers themselves, each partner end up with, your own way of doing it. So taking over a project from a different partner is difficult. Recruiting new developers can be difficult because everybody has their own way of doing it. So Project Bolt is also an attempt at unifying the way we build a search-driven solution. So to build Project Bolt, we had a few design guidelines in place to sort of drive the process and help us make decisions. And so the first one was basically we needed to make it fast. That was priority number one, because that was the main feedback we got from partners. We need something super fast. And so that was sort of the overall goal of everything. The second thing is that we wanted to make it safe by default. And the thinking there is that in the past, our APIs were really, or are really flexible, but it also means that it's super easy to create something that's not fast. So take, for example, as a developer, you would have a lot of communication with a database, for example, because there's a very natural way for a developer to work with an API. And our API sort of just let the developer into a solution into a situation where they didn't necessarily know exactly what the performance characteristics would be of the solution, simply because they were using things they were taught in school that a large application can't really adhere to. So we wanted to create an API that was safe by default. So it would be, you would have to actually jump through hoops to make it slow. So a good example of that is that every API of Ucommerce in new API here is paged, which means you cannot, if you have 1,000 products or 10,000 products in a category, you can't actually load all those 10,000 products in one go. You actually have to do them 100 at a time or 1,000 at a time, just to make sure that you're not bringing back too much information, because at the end of the day, we can create a super fast API, but if we also enable you to, bring back too much, well, then it's not going to be fast. There's just no way. So safe by default is really our attempt to build an API that enables you to build fast by default solutions. The third thing was the out-of-the-box experience. So one of the things that's near and dear to my heart is, the experience you get as a partner as you install Ucommerce. And so right from the get-go, we wanted to create a platform that was easy to set up, because I've experienced firsthand, the amount of work it can potentially take to set up a solution using other platforms, days without, doing anything but setting up the platform. So it's important to us that Ucommerce is easy to install. You can download a package, you can install it into the CMS of your choice, and you're up and running. But of course, introducing a search engine into the mix means that it can become quite difficult to do so, because an Elasticsearch, for example, requires you to set up, additional servers with that on it. So the out-of-the-box experience sort of guided some of the design choices we made, for example, to include Lucene as the default search engine, to make sure that you can just install everything and you're up and running with the new API. We also wanted to create a scalable solution. Of course, in e-commerce, we have these crazy peaks from time to time on Black Friday, on other particular times of the year. So we needed something that could scale across servers. And I just said Lucene, and many of you will know that it can't actually scale across servers. So we actually had to enable a scalable API. We also had to make it pluggable because we wanted to enable you to actually, install it easily out of the box, but as you need more power from the API, we also wanted you to be able to plug in your own search engine or a scalable search engine that can sort of be installed on multiple servers that work together to ensure performance. And we also wanted to do that without requiring you to change your solutions at all. So hence, the API needed to be pluggable from a search provider perspective. A key sort of additional benefit to that is the fact that as we spoke to partners about search-driven architectures, everybody could agree that a search-driven architecture is the way to go. However, nobody could really agree on which search engine was the way to go, right? There was just, every partner has their own sort of idea of which search engine is better. So, you know, an added benefit of making it pluggable is that we will ship a few providers for the API, but if there is a search engine that you prefer, you can plug it in yourself and it will work seamlessly within Bolt without changing the website you implement on top of the Bolt API. The final thing that we wanted to do with it was to create a unified API, because over the years, we sort of introduced a search engine within Ucommerce, we had a query API, and there was separate things. And so you had to traverse the two worlds. It became a little difficult, actually. So by unified, we wanted to make sure that we shipped an API that would deal with three key components of doing an e-commerce website. First one, static queries, right? So listing products by category, for example. So some of the more sort of stable things on a website that you do all the time, we wanted to ensure that that worked within the API. Full text search, of course, so you could start to do search still within the same API. And finally, faceted navigation, so you can sort of filter your websites based on various properties you set up on the product, like size and color, and all that within the same API. So as a developer, you don't have to dip in and out of different APIs. It's just one unified whole that we're working with. So that was the design goals for Bolt, and I do believe we arrived at a very, very nice place for that. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like. So this will, I know this is a lot to take in, but I just wanted to sort of show you the unified nature of Bolt. So the interesting thing is that we're working with the new API here, right? And you'll notice that we're using find, right, to indicate that we're doing search. We're also working off of an index. So we can, so all the information we have is stored within a really fast store to read from. But the really interesting thing is actually here in the where clause, where you can see we're actually combining the different types of search I just laid out. So first, static queries, right? So the first bit here is that we're looking for products within a certain category. You'll notice here that we're also doing a full text search. So we're doing a fuzzy match on color. So if a customer doesn't spell exactly right the color green, like use just one E or two I's, or I don't know, we'll still be able to actually find stuff. Of course, this is more for search, but still. You can see how we're doing ranged matches as well, literals and things like that. So we're actually combining here static queries with full text search with the ability of indicating how close a match should it be. Should the search result be boosted matches on this particular attribute? And of course, you can expand on. The other thing that's really cool here is this product model from a developer perspective. Because the thing is, in the past, we sort of defined the models that you would be working with. You would have a product and that was it. Introducing a new model into the mix was actually fairly difficult. But in Bolt, there is actually no requirement for any models at all by default by the core search technology. So that means you can expose your own models, your own classes that has attributes and things particular to your solution. And they will just be returned by Bolt. So you can sort of go ahead and specialize to your own needs. So kind of a cool thing from a developer perspective, makes it much easier to work with. But you will probably see our model still because of the API. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But this is really what it looks like. We wanted to create something that was familiar in concept, but not quite the same. So a lot of developers will be familiar with Link, which is a great query API from Microsoft, which does a really good job. However, Link is sort of a very large API that tries to cover everything for querying, and it's not really appropriate for search because search is simpler. So so what you're looking at here looks familiar. It looks like Link, but it's actually not Link. We internally use the the concept not link for our API, it should be familiar but not the same. So it doesn't have capabilities like grouping things and stuff like that, because it's not supported by the core search engine. So just to give you a sense of that. But the cool thing about this this query language here is that it abstracts away the underlying search engine, and so makes your solutions pluggable from a search engine perspective. And I just wanted to cover one other thing here, two other things actually. You'll notice here how skip and take, so paged approach to doing queries is required. If you do not specify a take, it will still only require a return a subset of the data that you have stored in this particular index, just to make sure that it's always fast. So you have to sort of make a conscious decision on how much to return and which bit of the data you're working with. But that's basically what the new API looks like. And I'll show you some before and after examples of how it looks like in action in a little bit. The last bit, so this covers static queries and full text search, right? The last bit is faceted navigation. And I've actually done a separate slide for that just to make sure that I highlight the difference, because what's interesting about this particular API is that it's, you know, very much in a mode where you're working with concrete fields, like you're looking at categories, looking at color and prices, you're sort of hard coding some of these concepts. But faceted navigation is very different, because it's more a matter of communicating with the customer, picking up the choices they make on the website, communicating that data back, ingesting it into the API, and then returning a result set based on that. So we wanted to make sure that that process of getting that data from the UI back to Bolt API and returning a result to the customer would be as seamless as possible. So the query API for that looks a little different from what you're seeing here, but it's still integrated into the same overall idea. So so this is just an example of the data that would be potentially received from the front end. We wanted it to look as close to JSON as possible, because that's probably what we're going to receive by default. So these are the facets that a customer would select. So color, and the color red, and size large, right? So this is data, right? And you'll notice here that within the search results, so we're still using the index and we're finding on that, but the where clause just ingests that data. There's nothing specifying that color should be equal to red and size should be equal to large. The Bolt API just knows how to deal with this in a sane way. So the turnaround and the ceremony for using this API is very low. So I think you're going to really enjoy working with these two modes, but all within the same API. So you can actually include facets, you know, right here in line with all the rest of it, which is, you know, probably what you want anyway. Good. Remember to use the Q&A if you have any questions. I'm keeping an eye on it in case there is something you are wondering about. Now, so I've used the word index for a while, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we actually speed things up within this new API. The ramifications are significant when it comes to the way that you are building solutions today. I made a very advanced architectural drawing here, 2 boxes with a line between it, right? That's probably as advanced as it gets. But the idea is essentially that with the introduction of Bolt, you know, you'll still be working with a backend where the merchant will be editing all the information and, you know, just getting it set up and made ready. But then at some point it will be indexed and passed on to the front end into the actual index. At which point the 2 data sets are actually disconnected. So the front end runs on a different set of data than the back end, really, if that makes sense. And the idea being that in this preparation process here, we can actually offload a lot of the calculations, a lot of the operations that was required before to actually display a product page to a customer to the index time. So we do it one time, and we can then display that result, you know, to 1 million customers. So instead of doing 1 million calculations on the front end, we're offloading it to the index process and doing it one time, and then just using the result of that calculation once, right? So a good example of that would be a product price. So in the old version of Ucommerce, we would calculate a product price whenever a customer would ask for it, right? So whenever you were looking at a product page, Ucommerce would have to go through a whole calculation process to make sure that we could display the right price. That calculation has moved from the front end to the indexing step, which means that we calculate a series of prices. And when time comes to actually present them on the website, it's basically just a number with a currency on it. All the calculation has been offset back to doing it one time, and you can then use that result many, many times. Another example would be URLs of products, right? To display a product in V8 of Ucommerce, we would have to generate a URL on the fly whenever a customer accesses a product. That step has been moved back to the index process. So the URL is generated one time and then stored within the index. So it's much faster to load up the product in question, right? And then you may be wondering about extension points and things like that. And so some extension points have been removed and new ones have been introduced. So a good example would be the price calculation that we talked about before. There's still a price calculation, right? It just happens asynchronously as opposed to real time. So you can still go in and modify prices. You just have to make decisions on it at index time. And if you really want, you can do calculations on the front end if it's required. But by default, our model is basically to push that back to make sure that everything is done up front, as opposed to later when the customer needs it, to make it as fast as possible. I hope that makes sense. So we're really just starting to copy data from one situation to another. And the cool thing is that if you plug in a new search engine, you know, the API out here will not know the difference. Basically, it'll just click in at the bottom, and of course you have to re-index, but that's basically it. To make sure that we sort of reach the indexing performance and the runtime performance we needed, we had to track very closely the performance of the API. So we were using various models for setting up indexes to try out, you know, what would be the performance implication of creating indexes in this way or that way. And that's basically what's expressed via model A. We actually had 4 models that we were working with, model A through D, just to see, you know, what performed better. And that's the beautiful thing about, you know, the introducing an index into the mix, that you can create indexes for the occasion. And indeed, that's actually what the best practice will be going forward, that if you have very specific requirements for your front end, that you create an index specific for your purposes. We will ship indexes out of the box to deal with products and catalogs and a few other things that will sort of work for everybody. It won't necessarily be the very fast it can be, but as you'll see in a moment, it's pretty friggin' fast. Also, you'll see here that we were actually dealing with a high number of products. We were dealing with approximately 500,000 products in our test scenarios, just to make sure that we had sort of a significant volume of product before to make decisions on. And you'll notice here we went with something that's similar to Model B, and you can see how our query time is approximately 20 milliseconds. So it's very, very fast to query these indexes. I just want to raise one little finger to just stress another point. This is per query, right? So if you issue, you know, hundreds of queries on each request, it'll still be slow, right? We can't really do much about it. So there's still sort of an exercise that's important here in thinking about how many queries do we actually require to build up a page. And we have some tools to help you with, you know, the performance characteristics of what's going on. You'll see those as we move forward. The other thing that's important here is that because we're moving data from A to B, there is an indexing time in play as well, as you can see here. Please ignore the indexing time here. This has been significantly sped up since the first measurements here. But there is a lag from when a merchant updates a product till it's made ready on the front end. It's very low, but you know, as number of products creep, it will be increased a little bit. And you can also see that we are going to require much more data from your hard drives, because we're now storing all the products in an index somewhere on disk, and so we're going to require some additional data storage than before, where it was just sitting within a SQL server. So I hope that makes sense. All right, let's take a look at the demo. So Avenue Clothing, most of you are probably familiar with it. So to try out Bolt to see what the performance looks like in a real, well, semi-real world scenario, we took Avenue Clothing and we sort of we ported it over to Bolt. There were two key things that we wanted to achieve with this. We wanted to make sure that the new APIs also work from a functional perspective, so we're not just sort of doing it in a vacuum. We wanted to try them out ourselves, and B, we wanted to make sure that that there was an actual, example of how to use them in addition to the documentation that we will be releasing with Bolt. So let's jump into the demo here. Let's see if I can find the browser. There it is. So you'll notice here that we are dealing with much a larger category set than we used to, right? So we have a ton of categories in here, and also a bunch of products. So instead of just believing our measurements, I just wanted to sort of give you a visual sense of the performance of the platform here. So let's start clicking around some categories here. So what's happening here is that we're loading up 100 products because it's paged, right? With prices and everything, images and things like that. Everything is good to go. And of course, we can move through additional pages if there are more products in the results. So I'm just gonna click a few more here so you can see. Load up a single product to get a sense of what that looks like. It's a little more bare bones than usual because it's still being QA. We can see we have sort of sub 1 second response times on the overall page load here. So everything from communicating HTML from the server to querying to bringing media in and all that good stuff. So when I took a look at this, and this is not actually the fastest, there are a few additional performance improvements we can put in place as we do QA. But you can see here how we're traversing through this this demo here that it's pretty fast. I think you'll be very happy with this. So let's jump back to the demo here. So there's just one other point I wanted to make about the demo you just saw. You saw me clicking around with sub 1 second response times on pages. And I just wanted to add another point to that, because when we set up the demo, we felt like, well, why not try and actually push the requirements a little bit when it comes to numbers. So the demo you just saw actually ran with 1 million products, not just 500,000. So, and you still saw very low response time. So I'm very, very happy to report that we're actually able to do, at least 1 million products. I think we could probably do more, but I think this will cover most of what you need for your solution. So it leaves a warm and fuzzy feeling inside. You'll also notice if we go back to the demo that the data looks a little funny, right? Ergonomic metal shoes, well, they're actually okay. Well, generic plastic chicken, practical frozen bacon, ergonomic cotton soap. So it looks a little weird, right? So it looks sort of right. Awesome metal shirt diesel, right? It looks kind of right, but it's not. So this is actually all generated data. That's generated through a tool that we use to make sure we can generate catalogs with certain characteristics. And we wanted to make this tool available to you guys. So as you're building out your solutions, you can actually use this Seeder tool that we use internally for our own load testing purposes. As you're building out your solutions, we've seen, a situation where, integrations with backend ERP systems and things like that, they tend to come about a little late in the game because it's a whole little project in of its own. And so, seeing performance issues and things like that in particular decisions that were made throughout the process building solution tend to come up fairly late in the game and surprise everybody unless you're doing sort of regular load testing. And so the Seeder tool, we wanted to make available so you can generate a catalog that it will be fake, of course. It will be general rubber chickens and things like that, but it will have the same characteristics as your own solution. So if you're building a B2B store, for example, you may have a lot of price points. So you can just tell the Seeder tool to generate a database with lots of price points. Or if you're dealing with an international scenario with 30 languages, you can tell the Seeder tool to generate a bunch of language specific attributes. If you're dealing with a scenario with lots of variants, like tens of thousands of variants per product, you can have it generate something that matches your characteristics. And very early on, you'll be able to catch any issues that might crop up. So, so I highly recommend the Seeder tool. We will post a link, I guess, to the somewhere. When we send this stuff out to you, we'll include a link. But it's on GitHub. You can just search for Ucommerce Seeder and have a go with that. So I think that's going to be pretty valuable. I wanted to give a shout out to the Bolt team who has brought all this about. Soren, Vitaly, Daniel, and Peter. They've done some amazing work for you guys to make sure that this is as fast as possible to use, as easy as possible to use. So I'm really, really happy about the job that these guys did. They really deserve a round of applause because it's just amazing stuff. So what are we shipping here by the end of the quarter? So we're shipping a unified query API that you saw. So the ability to do full text, facets, and static queries in one unified API. We're shipping a new top-level API that's sort of similar to the old one. So there will be a catalog library API to sort of make it a little easier to access some of the capabilities of Bolt. Whether you use it or not is completely up to you. It's just there for convenience. The main difference between the old catalog library and the new is basically that we're using GUIDs much more than models, but that's primarily the difference, and we slimmed it down a little bit. We're shipping a API that runs off of index data, and the index data will be powered by the Async provider in the first version. We are aiming to ship a scalable search provider in Q2. I'll talk more about that by the end of this stuff, of this presentation. And we're looking primarily at Elasticsearch for scalable search provider. And we're also shipping a Bolt-enabled Avenue clothing, as you just saw, that will show you how to use Bolt for an actual e-commerce scenario. Good. So that's Project Bolt. There's more to come, but I'm very, very happy with the work these guys did. Having a search-driven API that can deal with up to 1 million products, probably more, is quite an achievement, and I'm very, very happy about that. It's been a dream of mine for a few years now that we introduce something like this to the world, and it's here, and I'm just super, super excited about it. I think you will be too. So let's take a look at the other track. So the other part of the feedback we got from our partners was basically that our backend UIs required a bit of an update. They were based on old technology, postbacks, web forms. It was not great. So Project Kondo is really about moving Ucommerce to a modern UI stack, improving the workflows we have, and basically speeding up operations. And of course, we had a few design guidelines and principles for that as well. So the first one was that we wanted to create a UI that sparks joy. So basically, we wanted to put a smile on your faces as you use the UI. So little tweaks here and there that just makes it a pleasure to use. The other bit is that over the years, we spent quite a bit of effort of doing our UIs so they look like CMS. The challenge there is that the UIs tend to be not that great for e-commerce. So we decided to go with e-commerce first for the new UIs to create something that's tailored for e-commerce first. It will still look and feel slightly like the CMS, but we're sort of moving more towards building something that's more appropriate for e-commerce. We wanted to make sure that the users were confident. So as they're doing things within the CMS and in Ucommerce, we wanted to make sure that they do so without having too much fear. And we wanted to make sure that we would deal with focused experiences. So basically make sure that that the individual little apps, they used to be very big. They dealt with lots of things. We wanted to focus them in a little bit to focus on maybe dealing with high amounts of products or building catalog structures or stuff of that nature. So you'll see many more apps from Ucommerce than before. Before I move on, I see we have some questions in chat here. Let's see. So there's some concerns about the pre-calculated prices, and there's definitely something there. So for discounts, for example, what we'll do in the future is that we're going to pre-calculate the discounts that we can. So actually include those within the prices. The reason we do that is because we want to be able to show a price that includes any discounts when we're doing faceted navigation, for example. So the only way to do that is if the price in the facet index actually reflects the price as it would look as discounts are enabled. We can only do it for a certain type of discount. So we can only do it for discounts that affect one product. As soon as there's more context around it, we can't really display it in the product listing anyway, so they fit quite nicely together. And so for those types of discounts, they will just be included in Q2 in the price returned from the index. And then as more complicated discounts crop up, like multi-product discounts and stuff like that, that will be done once products are being added to cart. So that calculation will not need to happen on hundreds of thousands of products. It will only need to happen across the order lines that are actually in the cart. So the discount rules, the advanced discount rules, will still be available. We'll just split them in two. So some of them will be sped up significantly, and the others will only be applied in sort of low SKU count scenarios. So the flexibility is still there, and it's still fast. So I hope that answers the question, Andreas. There's another question from Alfred. Will Azure Search be one of the search providers? Azure Search is definitely something we're looking into. We have not selected the search provider yet. We are sort of leaning towards Elasticsearch, but we are also hearing a lot of noise about Azure Search. So I think we'll be down to either of the two, but we'll do a round with partners before we start building anything to select the one that we want. You will be able to build your own search provider. So if, say, you wanted Azure Search and we went with Elastic, you can still build an Azure Search provider or vice versa, right? So back to Kondo. So actually, I didn't want to spend too much time in Kondo, talking about it. I want to show you the thing. So let's jump right into a demo, shall we? So I have Kondo here. Let's see if I'm still logged in, maybe. Yes, I am. So Kondo running within Ucommerce 9 and Umbraco 8. So let's go to that. So with Kondo, we're shipping at the end of the quarter here, or mid next quarter, we're shipping 2 new apps. The Catalogs app, which deals with overall catalog structure, building that, editing categories and things like that, and the Products app that deals with editing products. So we wanted to sort of bring forth the disconnect of catalogs and products. So within Ucommerce, products have always lived in a disconnected fashion from its catalog. So a product can be added to multiple catalogs, but editing products has always sort of required you to navigate to a catalog and then find the product and then edit it from there. The Products app sort of just focuses on the products themselves. So we'll start with the Catalogs app, and the first thing I wanted to show you is the new overall navigational aspect. So you'll notice here that it sort of adheres to the Umbraco color scheme, but it's definitely a very different way of navigating the catalog. So first we have the store selector up here. So dealing with multiple stores is definitely still a possibility. And of course we can deal with multiple catalogs as well down here. We wanted to make it a little, so what we found over the years is that navigating everything in the left-hand side here is a little cumbersome. It can be quite confusing when you have multiple trees as we do. So we wanted to introduce a different way of dealing with navigation, so we can actually start to click through our catalogs like this. So fairly fast, and we can actually instead of having to right click, we can actually start to create categories right here from the builder itself. So I can just create my new category here, like that, and another one, my other new category. Whoops, if I can spell, there we go, and select the definition for that. That's it, right? But the cool thing is we've also always had the ability to order categories, right? So you could right click on it, you could say move category, which is very much in line with how Umbraco did it. But with this, it's sort of even easier because I can just grab it with my mouse and then say, I want this one to be the last one, or I can reorder my categories from before, right? So just drag and drop to make it easier. And I can also grab a category from back here and just move it to another subcategory to make it super easy to really quickly change the way that the stuff works. What I can also do is, you can't see it, but I'm taking my finger here and I'm taking it to my keyboard, and I'm actually starting to navigate, as you can see, the builder here just with my keyboard. So I don't really have to use the mouse to do it. So we want to introduce more keyboard shortcuts into the mix here, and navigation is the first bit. And I can also hit C here to create a new category. So I don't have to use a mouse if it doesn't make sense to me. And of course I can hit enter here, and I have a new category, right? You'll notice, of course, we can resize and things like that. Or it's just to make it a little easier to work with. So I think you're going to enjoy this new way of working with structure. It's definitely different from navigating the catalog structure up here. But I think it sort of gives you a better overview of where you actually are, and more capabilities that are a little more obvious, that creating a new category is actually done inline here instead of you having to go somewhere else. The other thing is that when we look at an actual category, let's see if I can find one with some actual products in it. You'll notice we have this sticky header up here, so we sort of continue to have access to the information we require. You can see how we can now scale with more languages than before. So having 24 languages within Ucommerce doesn't create a million tabs, it just creates a nice drop down. So it's a little easier to deal with. And you'll notice here the navigation over here to the left, that as I scroll through, it'll just follow suit. So I know where I am. And I can, of course, quickly jump to any section I want just by clicking the navigation. The reason we did this over tabs is that we got feedback that said that a lot of merchants actually do enjoy just scrolling through the information. So we created really long lists of information rather than a tab view that we've been used to so far. What we also did here is we separated primary actions from secondary actions. So there's no delete button here, for example. So you'll see here that it's been moved in here. Changing a definition doesn't happen that often. Deleting a category doesn't happen that often. So we moved sort of dangerous operations into this secondary operation button. And if we need to do things that are related to a section, there's a way to do it here, right? Like this. So I can just mark a few products, and I can do the operation right here, right? Remove them from the category. We also introduced a new media picker for the occasion here. So it's still connected to the CMS. It will be searchable, it will be uploadable, but it's basically just querying the CMS. We wanted to make sure that we had a way of dealing with media that sort of makes sense, that we can use across all the CMSs we support. So we're going to invest more in the media picker. For now, it just sort of mimics what you can do today, but it will be able to do more in the future. And the final thing I wanted to show you is, as I navigated through here and I moved a category like this, I want to drag your attention down here. So you'll notice that there is an undo button here. And this is part of making our customers more sort of secure in using the UIs here. So I can move my category and I can move it back if I want to, just by hitting the undo button. And the same thing goes with media, right? If I change the picture to something else, I can just go in, change my picture, and I can go right ahead and undo that to get to where I was. So it's sort of an overall design decision we made to get rid of save buttons and just sort of have the saves occur, because as we're indexing stuff to Lucene now, into the search engine, we don't really need to be so mindful about when data gets into the system. So that's a little bit of the Catalogs app. There will be more going forward, but that's basically where we're at with V9 for now. Now let's take a look at the Products app, because one of the this actually addresses one of the largest bits of feedback that we got. So you'll notice here the navigation from before. You'll notice that it's lazy loaded, so we get the UI and we can sort of wait around a little bit for the products to load. One of the biggest feature requests we've gotten on almost every client engagement is the fact whether we could add images or whether we could actually customize the listings here. And so we made an investment in that. So right now I've set it up in a particular way. We included the image out of the box, but I can actually click this button over here and get a listing of all the fields that are set up, the ones we ship with, and also the ones that would be added in there by you, right? So this is a custom field, and I can just go ahead and add that in. And so this will be persisted for the next time. This is my list. So if 2 users is using this platform and they customize their lists, they will have their own view particular to them. And of course, we can also include euro prices and things like that if we want to. So we can sort of include more than one price, as you can see down here. So any price groups you create will be part of that list as well. If we navigate into a product here, you can see again, various sections. In the future, they will be configurable. For now, we just add quick navigation for all the areas that we need, and we can then sort of navigate in and start editing this stuff with the validation and things like that. So that's a look at Kondo. I think you're going to like it. It's definitely much faster than before. The undo function, I'm a really big fan of, because it just makes it less daunting to do an update. And there's just, a bunch of nice little capabilities in here. So we had a second product team working on Kondo, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Louise, David, Espen, and Lucas. They've done an amazing job on Kondo so far. At the moment, they're doing QA for Kondo, just sort of tightening it up for release. I think you're going to really enjoy working with Kondo going forward. So what are we shipping? We're shipping 90% of all the catalog UIs. They've been reimagined, right? So you saw all of the catalog workflows that you're familiar with. We didn't quite make it all the way through. I'll talk a little bit about what will be shipped after the initial versions, the initial version of Ucommerce 9. But most of it is there, so we can get a sense of how we're thinking about the new UIs. We are shipping faster UI response time, so you saw how fast it is to navigate. There's no longer any wait period when Ucommerce needs to power up. It's not doing any jitting because we got rid of web forms on those UIs. We have improved workflows, so you can see how multi-language works. You can see how I can build catalog structures faster with keyboard shortcuts and things like that. And we're shipping a modern tech stack. So everything is based on Vue.js, which is an amazing JavaScript UI framework that just very productive. And I think our product teams are very happy with their decision on that. So let's talk about how you migrate to Ucommerce 9. And we can actually speak very confidently about that, at least for a solution, because we did it ourselves with Avenue Clothing. I realize it's a simpler solution, but it was built on MVC. It was built on some of the techniques that you see in an MVC application, and those same techniques do apply to an SPA architecture as well. So the key thing there that we found is the fact that the view bit is separated from the controller. The fact that you call an API, get some data, map that to a view model, actually makes it fairly straightforward to port your UI code to Bolt. So there are basically 4 things that you need to think about as you go to the migration process. The first thing is you need to consider scaling requirements. The reason I put that in there is because the first version of Ucommerce 9 will only ship with the Lucene provider, which means that you cannot scale across multiple servers with the new API to begin with. That will come right after the release. That we're going to implement a second provider, which will enable scalability. So there's a question in chat here. So about multi-culture. So I didn't bring that up, but the way we index data is basically means that an index has a version of language in it. So you would have a Danish language index for products. You would have a Swedish index language. So Ucommerce just figures out which one you want to deal with, depending on the culture that's set on the thread. So it's sort of transparent for you. Going back to this, scaling requirements just basically Bolt is so fast that you probably don't need 2 servers in many scenarios, because it's just incredibly fast. So it may be fast enough, but if you do want failover capabilities, things like that for redundancy in case a server goes down, you shouldn't run on the first version of Ucommerce 9. you should pick the next one, or you should build a provider, a scalable provider for Bolt based on Elasticsearch or Azure or whatever. We are going to build one such provider, and it's going to ship very, very quickly in Q2. But the very first version will only have the capability of running on a single server, just so you know. The second thing that needs to go is the data you have in your existing solution. We will migrate that automatically. The existing database schema did not change significantly from the previous version. So all your integrations and everything will continue to work the way it used to. And we can migrate that data forward for you. So all the products, orders, things like that, they just stick around and will be indexed into Bolt. The third point here, that's where the meat of the challenge is, right? Migrating your solution to the new API. I'm going to show you some examples of that. And the last bit, which is optional, is that, and this is something you need to start thinking about, building new solutions on top of Ucommerce 9, is that you need to define indexes and models. So you need to pick what data to make available on the front end. So maybe you need the SKU in there, maybe you need a price, maybe you don't need the short description, just a long description. So the idea is to keep the indexes as lean as possible and make sure to basically just include the stuff you need and pre-calculate as much as possible to keep performance up. But it's optional. We have indexes out of the box, which will be very fast, but you can obviously tune it more if you build something for your own scenarios. So here's an example of what a V8 looks like within Avenue Clothing. This is the controller which loads up a category, so the category page we were looking at before. And you can see here how we're using the catalog context of Ucommerce to grab the current category. This is really just a wrapper around Bolt for convenience, so you can load up the category if you want to, but the catalog context does enable you to reuse the current category once loaded if you need it in multiple places. So that's how that looks. And you'll see here how we're doing some of that computation I was talking about before as we're presenting the data. So we're asking the CMS to actually generate a URL for the picture on the category. So there's a little bit of computation happening there, which is obviously required for the old version. So if we look at Bolt, what that would look like, this is the same controller, but migrated. You'll notice here that the view code is actually the same. We're just mapping over stuff. We didn't actually change that much. You'll see how we're still using a catalog context. So it is a new catalog context from before, replacing the old one, but it's the same basic concept. So because most of you know about the context, you can just basically start using this by importing a new namespace and a new DLL. And the other thing that's different here is that there is no longer a requirement to do the mapping of URLs at runtime, because this happens at index time automatically for you. So there will be a URL for the image in here. And so, just a little speed improvement, because we're no longer relying on runtime performance from the CMS. The CMS provides everything we need at index time, and then at runtime, we are solely responsible for the performance on the data that we present. So simpler from that perspective. If you look at this is the front page of Avenue Clothing. Let me just give you a visual on that. So this is it's an interesting page, right? With these products actually being queried off of the APIs to make sure that we just click a little box on the products and then to bring it out on the front and show on homepage. You've seen it a million times, I think. And the query to do that, whoops, in the old API looks like this, right? We grab we query the current catalog and the categories, and we try and find products which have a product definition of and a field of name show on homepage. We convert the value of that to a Boolean, so we can do a comparison on it. So there's quite a bit of stuff happening here. And what's interesting is that from a SQL perspective, we're looking at 3-4 joins to actually complete this particular operation. So it's not super fast. If you contrast that with Bolt down here, which is significantly faster because the data is prepared, and because we've selected to have this particular field within the index, this is super fast, right? The requirement to do equals true will go away, so you can just go show on homepage, and we can actually further refine this by introducing a model that has show on homepage as a member on the model, so you can just go show on a homepage in a type safe manner. So I think this sort of highlights the value that we're bringing to the table with Bolt, that we're not only are we making it faster, we're also making it significantly simpler to do queries with the new API. So I was very, very happy with this. One other thing that I should talk about on the website. We are introducing a new URL scheme. I'm not sure if you noticed, but you'll notice up here that we are generating URLs that look that drops the payload. So previously there would be a payload here that said C-whatever, P-something else to indicate which category and product it was. That goes away in favor of slugs. So we now have pretty nice URLs for everything as we move through. You notice here that it says C here to indicate that it's a category. And these are basically slugs that are pre-calculated at index time. Just to reiterate, the reason that we're able to make it so fast is because we're offloading a lot of the calculations that used to happen on the front end to index time here. So we're now dealing with two concepts, right? We're dealing with index time and runtime. Index time being when we're moving data over to the front end, and runtime when that data is actually being presented. And the goal is to move as much of the calculation back to index time because we do it only once, and that's it. So let's look at the roadmap real quick, and then we will be concluding for today. So in Q1, we're shipping Bolt with all the things you saw, the Lucene provider and all that. We're ripping out RavenDB, it will be gone. Right off the bat of that, or off the backside of that, we're building an Elasticsearch provider. It may be Azure or something else. We're going to have a chat about it, but a scalable search provider that will work off more servers. We're doing an index engine as well to make it even easier to index. Today, Bolt is able to accept information from any data source, basically. So you can just query that thing and bring whatever you want into our indexes and have that nice API on top. I've left Q3 and Q4 open so we can deal with feedback. So any feedback you have on the back of this, we want to be able to address. And so there's half a year there where we can start to look into, things that will be, we will get back from the community. For Kondo UI, we're shipping primarily catalog bits here. We had to make a decision towards the end of the sprint here to exclude some things, but we're shipping the catalogs app, the products app, variant handling. We did not have time to do catalog picker, so adding a product to category is not in there to begin with. The old UIs will be in there, so you can still do it, but we'll ship that right on the back of the initial release. We did not have time to do prices. All the UIs and everything is ready to go, but we didn't have time to implement it. And the stores app to edit store properties is not in there, but it will be very rapidly on the backside of the release of V9. In Q2, we're dealing with application support, so you can start to extend the new UIs basically. And Q3, we're dealing with promotions, so simplifying, doing more with promotions. The research is happening right now. Helle, our CX director, is doing that work at the moment. And finally, we're dealing with order management at Q4. Workflows that pertain to e-commerce workflows that tend to live within the e-commerce platform, like returns, customer workflows, split payments, things like that. And finally, availability. So we had originally targeted March 31st for release. However, we could see that we were going to slightly miss that deadline. So Ucommerce 9 will be made available on April 15. On that Wednesday, we will start to push out new packages, communication, and all that good stuff, at which point you can start to play with the new stuff. And that's our presentation today. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you liked what you saw. I hope you will send us lots of feedback. Presentation will be available. Screen recording will be available. And if you have any questions, I can definitely stick around and answer those for now. So thank you very much. So let's see what we have here. So there's a few questions. There's one from Ruben. Will there also be something available for synchronizing different environments like continuous integration? So continuous integration, and synchronizing different environments, it's definitely something that we've heard a lot of feedback on, and it's something that I really want to include in the roadmap for core. I want to make sure we get Bolt absolutely right first. So we need to ship Bolt here at the middle of April, and we need to ship the scalable search provider But after that, a sync tool is definitely something that that's very high up in my thought process on what to include in the roadmap. So if there are more of you thinking about, you know, how to synchronize environments, things like that, send me an email. You can reach me at ssl@ucommerce.net, just fire away, and I'll make sure and score it. So we're triaging capabilities in our product management tool. So basically, whenever we hear about new feedback, we'll pop it in there and we'll start scoring it with a user score, so it pops up. So we make sure that we address feedback as per the most requested and most valuable features. There is another question from Jerome. Currently, we're working towards certification for Ucommerce. I already see the current material is a little, not far behind the current versions. Can we expect materials to be updated with Ucommerce 9? Is it worth to wait or moving forward with V8? So you can expect updated materials. We are actually customer success. Our customer success team is writing up documentation. The Bolt team has also been writing up documentation, and you've seen sort of drips and drabs on that on LinkedIn and our blog, and there will be more about that. We will definitely update the masterclass. We actually already updated the masterclass for a workshop we did on Bolt. So you will be, we just need to update videos and things like that as well. But the masterclass was also updated in the same way that Avenue Clothing was. Whether to wait, that's a difficult question. A lot of the concepts are the same, but there are also things that you don't need to learn anymore. So I think in many cases it will be much easier to certify on Ucommerce 9. So probably wait, read the documentation and things like that. From a technical perspective, that would be my answer. From a business perspective, you know, we do require partners to certify to actually become a partner within the new partner model. So if you don't want to wait on that, definitely certify on what we have already, and a lot of those concepts will be translatable to the new stuff. Andreas asks, can we get the PowerPoint? Sure thing. You'll get both the video, the PowerPoint. Any idea when the Umbraco plugin will be upgraded to Ucommerce 9? So Alfred asks this question. So what do you mean, Alfred? So we will be running within Umbraco at launch time. So what are you thinking? Okay. Doesn't look like we have additional questions here. So I just want to say thank you one more time for attending this this webinar on Ucommerce 9, April 15. Remember that, and stay safe out there.